Okay.
Okay, so we'll crack on with the next webinar. So welcome everybody. We'll start probably in the next sort of 30 to 60 seconds. So if you'd like to grab yourselves a coffee or a cup of tea, now is the time, albeit it needs to be relatively quick. Today's webinar is recorded and it will be available for you on our YouTube channel. So if you get cut off at any point throughout, you can also go through our website and contact us and we'll point you in the right direction. You may notice that we're all working from home, obviously with the current COVID lockdown scenario. So please do forgive any noise, dogs barking, Amazon deliveries, and screaming children, the classic sort of three, aren't they? So please just bear with us there. In terms of today's webinar then, it is titled What's New for SEO in 2021. 2021 is already here, can't believe it. So it's a fascinating webinar for you. I'm Richard Milestone, I'm one of the directors at Global Search Marketing, but I'm going to make way now for Steve Haynes, who's going to be presenting. Steve is our director of SEO, so you're in good hands. There's not much Steve doesn't know about SEO. So if it's okay, I'm going to get handed over straight to Steve and let's get cracking.
All right. Hi, everybody. Yeah, as Rich said, my name is Steve Haynes. I'm the SEO account director here at Global Search Marketing. Today, what we're going to essentially do is take a bit of a whistle-stop tour about what you should be focusing in on in 2021. Essentially, what we're going to look at are some of the old classics that every SEO and every person doing SEO knows to look at, and ways that we can further optimize them beyond the basics. We're going to look at some of the changes that have been made over the past couple of years, and how, even though then the algorithms and systems that these aspects are focused on aren't that old, and how we can still take them one step further than we have necessarily in the past. And then finally, what we're going to do is take a look at the essentially the cutting edge of SEO, which are the elements that Google has already warned us about moving forward, updates to the algorithm that are coming at some point in this year. So to start off with, we're going to take a look at what we've dubbed the classics in regards to on-site content. Now, the first thing we're going to be looking at here are title tags and meta descriptions. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell you what a title tag and meta description is, but you can see some examples there on the page. Now, traditionally, for title tags and meta descriptions, it's been all about including the targeted key terms that we're trying to rank for and meeting the character limits for each of the elements. Now, for title tags in particular, and I think this does also hold true for meta descriptions as well, depending on what language you're utilizing, actually the character limit is more of a pixel limit. But for English, which is going to be the main thing for most of you, I imagine, you don't really need to worry too much about this. This is only really for languages that are like Chinese or Japanese, which use a different, completely different kind of like character set to the Latinate languages. So with title tags and meta descriptions, what are we actually needing to do with them in 2021 that's different from before? Well, fundamentally, what we need to look to do is stand out from the competition. And the reason for this is, if you stand out from the competition, not only will you get more clicks compared to the average site in the positions that you're ranking in, which was obviously more traffic, and more traffic means a more likelihood of conversions, which obviously helps your business's bottom line. But also, if you're standing out from the competition and getting that additional click-through, then there's a chance that overperformance could be seen by Google as a sign of quality and increase your rankings. There's no guarantees on this, but we do know click-through rates and things like that can impact on rankings. So it's entirely feasible that if you stand out and just generate more clicks overall, then you will be in a stronger position in the rankings as a matter of course. So how do you stand out with these things? Well, for title tags, actually, somewhat luckily, moz.com, a gentleman by the name of Cyrus Shepherd who works there, ran some experiments last year which showed that there are certain elements commonly used in title tags that can be removed. And what that means is if you can remove those elements, not only, as you can see here, in some instances, you can see increases in your traffic itself, but you'll also then have more room and more characters to play around with to stand out. So if you look at the example that's on the page there below, which I have directly ripped off of from the Moz blog that's linked there, so you can go and make a note of that and read it yourselves, because it is quite interesting overall. You can see here that what Cyrus has done is he's stripped out categories from the title tag, which given the name of the category that he's used here is Whiteboard Friday. That's quite a number of characters that needs to that have been gotten rid of, which just gives more ability for them potentially to add some additional things in there as well if they wanted to. Now, in this instance, they didn't necessarily feel the need to, because what they actually saw was a 20% increase in traffic from once they removed the category. However, what they also tested was removing brand references from their title tags, and that saw a reduction in traffic for themselves. Now, I think removing categories and, in effect, dead weight in terms of the characters that are in your title is definitely worth everybody looking at doing. Removing your brand is something that I think Moz would have seen a reduction for, but a lot of other businesses might not have necessarily done so. The reason being, Moz has a very strong brand within the sector that they operate in. So if you have a strong brand, then sure, absolutely, leaving your brand reference in there is probably actually a good idea, because people will associate you with quality, expertise, whatever it might be within your sector, and then they'll gravitate to you more as a result of that. However, if you don't necessarily have a strong brand and the name of your business and your brand is quite lengthy in terms of characters, you know what? It might actually be worth testing just to see what the impact is of you removing that and having some different types of content in your title tag to help you stand out, what that can deliver for you. Because otherwise, what you might find is you're just keeping the same stuff there for no real benefit. So really, the core with this is make sure you're running experiments and make sure you're testing these things. If you've got like thousands of pages on your site, don't just immediately remove everything. Choose some pages and run some tests and make sure that you're actually seeing some real benefit from this before you roll out across the entirety of the site. For meta descriptions, really what you need to be doing to optimize these to stand out is just provide a reason to click through for the user. You don't necessarily need to worry about shoehorning the key term into the copy anymore. Meta descriptions don't actually have a direct impact on rankings like they used to. But what you do need to do is make sure that you are providing a reason to click, to entice the user to choose your website over the whole host of others that have been put before them in terms of the search results. How do you do that? Well, it's about your unique selling points. It's about your awards. It's about all of the things that make you an expert in your field. It's about highlighting offers or strengths that are relevant to the search term. So if it's a term with like high buying intent, for instance, mentioning your free delivery, your returns policy, that's 30 days, money back guaranteed, all of those sorts of things would be a good thing to put in there. If you're working in the B2B space, I'll be honest, it can be a lot harder to kind of like find things to talk about that separate you from the competition. But broadly speaking, there will be something that you do. It might just be the length of time the business has been around. It might be that you're award winning. It might be that your software that you offer is one of a kind. Whatever it might be, those are the sorts of things you need to look to highlight in your meta descriptions where it's appropriate, because that will make you stand out from the competition. Next thing in regards to like on page, or regards to like the classics, is on page content, which I'm sure you all know that how we used to do that and still do this to this day. It's all about utilizing the key term in all the appropriate places. We use it in the H1, we use it in the alt attribute of images. Targeted terms get used throughout the copy in a natural way, not too much obviously, because we want to avoid keyword stuffing and all of those sorts of things, and we need to avoid thin content that's less than 500 words. Now, that's still all true to a degree, but a couple of bits and pieces have shifted, primarily being that what's moving forward, it's not just about optimizing the page for the key term, it's about optimizing the content of the page to the user's intent that they're looking for when they're making the search. And also it's about showing expertise. Then this can largely be done by increasing the length of content. So let's start off with user intent here. So what is that? Well, back in 2006, a study from the University of Hong Kong basically found that search intent can be split into two segments: users who are looking for general information about a topic, and users who are looking to find specific answers to a query that's about the keywords they've used. Now, I think you can actually go a bit further than this and actually split things into three. You've got action terms, which are highly specific and all about achieving something there and then. The term buy red wine, well, it's about buying red wine. You need to make it easy for that person to buy the wine thereafter. Informational terms, it's all about giving them the answer in an efficient manner as possible. How can I lose weight? Make sure that the answer is actually there in front of them when they click properly. If they're looking for a vegetarian chili recipe, give them the recipe straight away, rather than making them wade through 500 to 1,000 words of family back history as to why this is all really important to you. I'm sure it's a lovely story, but as a chef in a hurry, I don't have time to read that. I don't want to read it. So just give me the recipe immediately. And then finally, what you have are mixed terms. Now, mixed terms are very much what we would largely consider to be broad key terms. They are potentially quite confusing as to what the intent can be. So if we look at, for instance, red wine and weight loss as topics, like there's so many different areas you could delve into on those if you were trying to rank for those terms. Now, what that means, what you need to do for those is provide, in effect, almost like a hub page, I think. Those hub pages will contain lots of little bits of information about all of the subtopics within that topic. So red wine, it might be the types of red wine, the grapes that go into red wine, the places that make the best red wine, those sorts of things. And then have a link in that little subtopic area that goes off to a more in-depth piece of information and a more in-depth piece of content, which is also on your site as well. Now, we know actually that this is probably in line with what Google is looking for, because Google's very recently, kind of like, I think it was just before Christmas, they patented a new aspect of their algorithm, which is very much focused on subtopics. Now, subtopics are literally what it says on the tin. It is looking at the content of a page and then being able to pull out individual aspects for better so it's a case of being able to pull out individual aspects from the page that match the user's intent in a way that enables the user to find the information they need really easily. So rather than having a page for everything on the website, you can actually have a broader piece which answers some of those questions, and Google will now be able to pick it up and find it. And I've certainly started seeing that coming through a lot more often in the search results recently. So with mixed terms, what you need to do is just make sure that you're covering a broad array of topics. And then ideally, if somebody has come through and is on that page, you're giving them more of an opportunity to find more in-depth information afterwards, just to keep them engaged and make sure they don't bounce. Now, you may be looking at a lot of these terms and be kind of going, well, hang on a second, these are just basically head terms and long tail terms. And you'd be right, broadly speaking, they are. This isn't necessarily anything new, but the manner in which we look at these sorts of terms needs to shift slightly moving forward. It's still all about on-page optimization, but it's just about making sure that the content that we're serving them matches what the user wants, because ultimately that's what Google wants to see, is a happy user. So that's what we need to deliver to them. So how do you identify and optimize for user intent? Well, really, it's actually quite simple. Search for the key term that you're trying to rank for. Analyze what's ranking on the first page of the search results. Compare to what you've got already or what you're looking to include in your content if it's brand new. Make sure that your content contains all the elements that are found in ranking pages, and go further in answering the user's query than the competition has before you. Fundamentally, if you do that, you'll be in a better position overall to not just meet the user's expectations, but go further than your competition is. And that's what Google really is looking for. So I also talked about kind of like the length of content in relation to expertise and showing expertise. Now, since the Panda update, which I think was around about February 2011, Google's penalized websites that contain what is considered thin content. Traditionally, this is about 500 words or less. Now, in 2021, that still holds true to a degree, but there is some evidence to suggest that in certain instances, like e-commerce sites, if you've got pages that don't have 500 words, you know what, you're actually probably still going to be able to rank for them, because they've realized that in this particular instance, the product page doesn't need to have 500 words on it to deliver what the user wants. In fact, it might just be a case of there might only be 200, 300 words, because that's all the product description and information is needed to get to get across to the user what they can do here. So if you're running e-commerce, it's still a good idea to try and hit that 500 words if you can, but it's not the end of the world. Now, what the other thing in regards to expertise and kind of like length of content is that what we've found personally is that additional content on a page does seem to add up to additional gains in rankings. So we personally added up around about 1,500 words to certain pages on our site. All of it was obviously relevant content, which saw our rankings increase from the second page to the top 5 in Google. All in all, helping contribute to a 176% year-on-year growth of organic traffic during last year. So if you can add additional content to your pages, you definitely should look to do so, because it does have a real world impact on your rankings. And then we've seen that firsthand ourselves. So second area we're going to be looking at is kind of like offsite SEO. Now, when we talk about offsite, really, we're talking about backlinks. That's the bread and butter of an awful lot of SEO, and there's a good reason for it. Google still heavily utilizes backlinks as part of its algorithm, and they've said time and time again that when they run tests that look at what the impact is without them, the quality of the search results drops massively. So traditionally, backlinks, what we're looking at is the quantity, how many links we've got, and the quality, how good the websites we're getting links from are, normally measured by domain authority or some equivalent of that. Now, moving forward, there's another area that we need to be looking at in regards to backlinks, which is topic authority. Now, you can see here on the left, I've kind of grabbed a screenshot from Majestic SEO. Now, Majestic has had this tool in place for a number of years now, but it does seem that Google is very much going down in this direction, again, based on patents and things that they've applied for. So essentially, it looks like Google is now categorizing websites by the sectors that they are a part of. And basically, websites within the same category will likely be weighted more compared to links from sites in non-related categories. So if you've got a fine arts website, as an example, and you're getting backlinks from other fine art websites, fine art magazine websites, and you're getting backlinks from, cooking websites for whatever reason, the cooking website links are going to be worth less than the fine art links. Which means that in terms of what you need to do moving forward, you need to probably be putting a bit more attention on generating quality links from within your kind of like area of expertise or within the online ecosystem that you are actually a part of. Now, topic authority is especially important for websites that are broadly classed as your money or your life sites. With the Google Medic update from 2017, I think it was, we saw like medical websites and websites dealing with healthcare matters kind of take massive hits in the rankings and their traffic because they were deemed not to be trustworthy enough. Now, one of the ways that you can help build up that trust is by getting these high quality links from trusted places within your sector and within like the area that you are an expert in. So for your money, your life sites, topic authority is very important and something that you will definitely need to be paying a lot of attention to. Now, moving on to the fresh but not necessarily new aspects of the algorithm. So again, going back to the Google Medic update, around about the time that came out, we ended up with an update to Google's guidelines where new sections were added, and you can see the sections here, but the bit in bold on point 2 is what really we're focusing in on here, which is that content demonstrates expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Expertise, authority, trust, EAT. Those 3 letters and those 3 words have become kind of like the bedrock of an awful lot of SEO discussion over the past few years, and for good reason. It's clearly something that Google is massively focused on. And you'll note earlier on, I've already mentioned expertise as a thing in relation to the length of the content. So it is something that we can show is absolutely having an impact on the rankings at this very moment. So in terms of sorry, this is currently just the last bits and pieces of the EAT information. It's basically just saying everything is fine, regulated, moderated, and that everything works properly and delivers what the user wants. But how do we actually optimize for expertise moving forward? Really, this is, and again, I've already mentioned this, when I was talking about the red wine kind of broad key terms. What you need is to develop topic clusters. You have your pillar piece of content, which may very well be, having little bits of information on broader topics within what you're talking about, and then from there you would link off to specific pieces that are more in-depth explorations of each subtopic, and you're just linking through them almost like a mini website. So if you've got that there, if you've got the length of the content, if you've got the key term optimization still happening on there as well, you'll be in a very good position to optimize for expertise moving forward. Now, authority and trust, we are going to combine these in 2, because in some ways it's very difficult to actually differentiate them from Google's perspective, not without obviously getting a look at what their algorithm is and everything. But what we're kind of looking at here is a number of different elements that we've done in the past to help some of our clients, kind of like these specifically. We've done this with ones in like the healthcare space and medical space, improve their rankings. Now, directly from the guidelines, you can see Google's saying websites need to feature auxiliary information such as about us, contact, or customer service information. That is really quite obvious. If they're highlighting it, make sure you've got that, make sure the information's up to date, make sure it's correct. Otherwise, what's the point of it being there? What we also found was that if you can attach an expert author to your content where it's relevant and provide a bio with information on their experience and qualifications, that can have a positive impact. So for instance, pharmaceuticals, doctors or pharmacists, if it's the wine, the sommelier, or somebody important within the business needs to be the author of the piece. Now, Google has apparently announced at some point that they are actually quite possibly able to identify whether or not a piece is actually written by the expert. Essentially, this looks like they are doing linguistic analysis of the content and saying, actually, this is written in a slightly different style. This clearly isn't the same expert. So it's not just a case of shoving the the name of the person onto the blog that your agency's written. It's making sure that it is actually crafted in a similar way across all of the different pieces. Now, just dropping back to the About Us page a little bit, if you can display membership of your relevant industry bodies with links, the history of the site, your case studies, those will all help going some way to providing proof that you are authoritative and trustworthy. So one of the other things to look at in regards to trustworthiness and authority is reviews. Now, reviews are very important, and therefore it makes sense that Google is going to care about them. In the e-commerce space, 63% of customers are more likely to make a purchase from a site that's got user reviews. 18% is like the average increase in sales that you see in e-commerce when reviews are available. And in B2B, 92% of people with purchasing power are more likely to purchase a product or service if they read a trusted review. Now, What that means is you need to actually be paying attention to reviews, not just for your user experience, but because Google is going to be paying attention to them. And we know they do, because actually studies have found that this is specifically for local SEO, but for local SEO and how Google ranks local businesses, reviews account for almost as much as a backlink in terms of the importance of as ranking factors. Because you can see here on the graph with the source I've got that down there for you to check out yourself if you want. 16% link signals, 15% review signals. Like, this really does matter. Google is paying attention to these things because, like, if there's a wealth of information on how good your website is or how good your business is, they'd be mad not to actually take it into account when they're trying to determine what the rankings are. And that's exactly what they're doing. So moving then on to what I'm dubbing the cutting edge. Again, what I said earlier is that this is about what Google has already announced is coming up in 2021. Some of these things were meant to have happened last year, but they, due to the pandemic, put pause on them, gave people more time to cope and to adapt. And I think by the midpoint this year, this is when all of these things are meant to be coming in. The first thing is Core Web Vitals, which are essentially a new set of metrics and factors that Google considers important in evaluating an overall web page's user experience. So a new report was created in Search Console, which shows you errors on your site for the 3 new metrics. Google's own studies show that for pages that have strong Core Web Vitals, visitors are 24% less likely to abandon the site. So even if you weren't concerned about ranking per se, looking at these things is definitely going to have an impact on your bounce rate and your user engagement. So it's definitely worth looking at. What are the metrics themselves? Well, there's 3 of them, as I said. We've got the largest content paint, which is basically the time from clicking on a link to seeing the majority of the content on screen. The first input delay, the time it takes for a user to actually interact with your page. And cumulative layout shift, basically how stable a page is as it loads. So for instance, if elements on your page move around as the page loads, then you've got a high CLS, which is bad for user engagement. So these are the core things that Google wants us to look at. And as I say, if you go into your Search Console, you will find a report which highlights all the pages and gives you some benchmark metrics to aim for LCP, FID, and CLS. So I really would heartily recommend you going in and take a look at that. Now, how do you optimize for them? This is very much delving into the areas of technical SEO, and you will probably almost certainly need to get your developers involved in this in some form. For CLS, it's about setting size, attributes, dimensions for any media on your site. So videos, images, GIFs, infographics, all of those different things, making sure that there is a specific statement that says, hey, this is meant to be this size and it's meant to be in this location. Now, you can still do this and it still be responsive in mobile, so don't worry about that. But setting those size attributes is very important now. If you've got add elements, make sure there's a specific reserved space for them. And if you're and you should look to add new UI elements below the fold, so expected content is near the top. Again, going back to meeting those user expectations, but just from a technical perspective. FID, or first input delay, minimize or defer your JavaScript, remove any non-critical third-party scripts, and make sure you're using browser caching and that it's enabled for users. Large content paintful, remove any unnecessary third-party scripts, upgrade your web host so that they're actually working to the latest bits of information and optimization. Set up lazy loading on your website so that images load as and when they're needed rather than just all at once or at random points. And then remove large page elements that aren't necessarily being helpful to your page loading times. The next thing then is looking at mobile first indexing. Really, this is a bit of a misnomer. It's been called mobile first indexing for a while, but moving forward, it's basically going to be mobile only indexing. What that means is the way that Google's crawler views websites is it's going to be as though it's viewing it through a mobile browser rather than a desktop, which means that essentially if your mobile experience isn't great, then it doesn't matter how good your desktop is because Google won't be looking at it and your rankings are going to plummet as a result because they're going to be looking at your mobile website first. Initially, it was said that by March this year, all crawls performed by Google will be mobile first or mobile only. I think it has been pushed back a little bit further to later on this year, but it's certainly going to be no later than the summer based on the information we have currently. So definitely worth you looking at and focusing some time and energy on. But what do you actually need to do to prepare for it? Well, make sure you've got one site for both your mobile and desktop, no mobile version only of sites. Make sure the content matches across both, so no different content across either of them. And make sure you've just got a good mobile experience for crawlers and users. And again, for users in particular, sorry, I just lost my thing there. Yeah, for users in particular, if you go and check out Search Console, you'll find that there are, in fact, reports in there which highlight, hey, these elements are too close together. You should consider changing them so that it's easier for people to click with on a touchscreen phone or an iPad or whatever. So Google's direct advice for this, though, essentially boils down to engaging mobile lazy loading, making sure your robot's meta tags, so your no follows, your no index, those sorts of things, match across desktop and mobile. Make sure that your images are responsive and optimized for both desktop and mobile, and make sure your videos are placed in a sensible position for both desktop and mobile. So if you look at those, you should be in a good position as a starting point for optimization. And you can see here what I mentioned here is like the Google Search Console, a report where you can see here we've got clickable elements too close together, content wider than the screen. All of these there are the sorts of errors that you might be seeing if you go in there and take a look. Again, it's not necessarily a new report, but with the shift moving forward to mobile first or mobile only indexing, this is going to be more and more important than it has been previously. So rounding up, basically ensure you're optimizing your title tags and meta descriptions for click-through rates. Ensure that your efforts at optimization match user intent. Ensure content is a decent length to answer the intent behind key terms and keep the user engaged. Generate links on websites within your little online niche or ecosystem. Create expert content through topic clusters. Ensure your website is performing well with core web vitals, and get ready for mobile first indexing. That is pretty much it on my end. So I think Rich was just going to quickly jump on for the last bit and give a few final words.
Wow, I think, Steve, that was excellent. Lots and lots of SEO considerations there. I don't expect anybody to get through all of that in one foul swoop. But I think the key message is the importance of the basics and just systematically building a plan and working through all of what Steve has talked you through. I'm sure if you work through, you will see marked improvements. So thank you very much for that, Steve. And thank you guys for obviously attending, and hope you found it useful. Even myself, I enjoyed watching that immensely. So the next webinar for you is coming up shortly, which will be using Instagram to boost brand awareness. And I believe that's scheduled for the 19th of February. So please do come along and join us. If you want to get to sign up for that, you can do so through our website. So www.globalsearchmarketing.co.uk. You should be able to find a sign up. That would be very useful for all. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you all again, and thanks, Steve. Please, with this COVID, please do keep yourselves and your family and colleagues safe, and have a good day. So thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you again.